Radio, where we discuss the unidentified, the unexplainable, paranormal, conspiracies, and much more. Starring your host and co-host, Jenny Nicasio, Sean Kelly, and Jason Sledgehammer Ryan Petra. Brought to you by UPRN Network. Now for your host, Jenny Nicasio.
Good evening and welcome to Chasing Prophecy on FM 105.3 in New Orleans on the UPRN Radio Network, where we discuss anything and everything beyond the scope of normal in New Orleans. Remember to like us on Facebook, follow us, and subscribe to us on YouTube. We're on TikTok too. Happy Torture Tuesday. I'm Jenny Nicasio along with my co-host, Sean Kelly, Jason, I, and Petra, and our guest co-host, John Ventry. How's everyone this evening?
Good. Happy Torture Tuesday.
I'm happy as a jaybird.
I'm sorry. I just saw that we weren't streaming on Pittsburgh Paranormal. So if you guys want to share the live on that, I see that we're not streaming for some reason. We got kicked off. I'm sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say every day above ground's a good day.
Yes. Oh my God, exactly.
It'll be much more peaceful 6 feet under.
Oh, that was a good series, huh? Did you guys see that on HBO? Wasn't it on HBO, 6 feet under?
Yeah. Oh, wow. We got somebody from Tokyo.
Oh, Tokyo.
Hi, Irene. How are you?
Oh.
Yeah. She said good morning.
And good morning.
Oh, good morning. What time is it there?
Irene, what time is it in Tokyo?
He doesn't know.
I'm just curious.
Guys, we have a very interesting evening show in store for us tonight. So let's get to that. I want to ask you guys, do you guys follow the astrology, your signs, your zodiac?
Zodiac, yeah.
Yeah,
I do. The only ones that I follow actually are the ones that I read in the newspaper, to be honest with you. Because when it comes to like I was supposed to have been born on the cusp of a certain Gemini, whatever, but what really for me is that there's a lot of, when it first was written, astrology, look at how often the earth rotated. Okay. Did it throw off the astrology chart or did it stay the same? That's my question for your guest tonight.
Okay. Now I like to follow the
dive right in.
in the newspaper, am I having a good day or not? But before we get started, we have to do a shout out to our sponsor who is sponsoring this portion of the show. And have you guys taken CBD oil, John, Jason,
No.
Sean?
No.
Well, I
use olive oil.
Olive oil, yeah. Well, this
Coconut oil.
product, Via Hemp Company, they have a product, a CBD product that helps relieve stress. It helps you sleep. But, some of them have left me feeling a little disappointed. I didn't do anything. It's kind of wasting my money. Well, Via Hemp Company is dedicated to crafting high-quality strength hemp products that you can actually feel the difference. And that's really important, especially if you're stressed out and you need some, stress relievers in this crazy world we live in. And get this. They have a legal THC product that they can ship anywhere in all 50 states. And that's really cool. I was always thinking you couldn't do that. But these guys have crafted a product to promote specific effects such as sleep, pain relief, and even energy. And I need a little bit of that tonight, because I need to take my nap. So whether you want gummies, topicals, vapes, or drops, they got you covered. So head over to Via Hemp Company, just like it says, Via Hemp Company, and use the code prophecy15 to get 15% off. And remember, that's viahemp.com. And you can go to our website and click on the link too. Okie doke. I believe that we are all governed by astrology. And I have to get this, guys. You know how we were in Mercury retrograde? Remember that?
Yep.
May was a horrible horrible month for me. And until and it was actually, I feel a lot better since June 3rd, and that's when it was over. Did you guys have any of that effect with the
Oh
month?
yeah, absolutely.
It's just a transition from like winter to spring to summer all in like the same day
That's who.
here in Pennsylvania.
May has always been a bad month for me. I don't know why, but all the bad luck I ever have is in May.
Exactly.
It really, I'm telling you, it really is.
No, you know what they used to say, that May brings change. And I tell you what, let's see, my marriage ended in May. My sister passed away. My dad passed away. My aunt passed away. My uncle passed away. It seems like so many crazy things, but one good thing was I got my grandbaby was born. So that's a good thing. And so I hope it's starting to change, get out of that weird.
Well, you know what Mayflowers bring, right?
Mayflowers
They bring
what?
pilgrims.
Only you, my friend. Only you.
Only you. Oh my God.
Oh my.
You're crazy. Well, it's going to be a good night if everything happens, because I'm hoping it does. So we're going to have a good night, guys. Remember? Because we got a great guest, and I just hope he turns in tonight, because it's going to be crazy if he doesn't, because I'm going to be like, okay. Oh, my God.
Maybe it wasn't in the stars if he doesn't show up.
Maybe. But we're going to talk a little bit about what we think that he is. Now, when I go into his bio, Jeff, now he's coming on at 9:30. So, but let's talk a little bit about what he does. He's a Vedic. Is that how you say it? Vedic? Am I saying that right?
I think it's Vedic.
Vedic astrologer. Now, they examine the world events and help clients they navigate their lives. So this goes back to the Indian Hindu teachings. So I hope we can, and he believes that the Hindus, they teach spiritual growth. So I hope we can get a really good definition of that and examples of that, because I'm still not really sure how that differs from regular astrology. I know like we have the 12 zodiac signs, and then we have like, each zodiac signs in the what do you call it? The constellations, they all line up. That's as far as I know how this works. And I've always wanted to study astrology, but it's too much math. So I don't know.
Too much math.
Too much math for me.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that when you?
I remember being a kid and just really into stars and telescopes and learning about the planets and stuff.
Yeah,
and
I was always into that.
Astronomy
Irene says that she uses Asian astrology, and I don't know how that works. I know I know there's Asian numerology, and you can actually tell how many lives you lived. I don't know if you guys knew about that.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
I didn't.
Didn't you? Did you know about that, Jason?
No, I didn't know about that.
There's a formula. Our old host was in here for a month. Robert Pagani. He was telling me about how you can tell how many. It's all about the numbers. You take you add your birth date. It's just really crazy. Maybe this astrologer can help us understand that.
Well, Eastern beliefs are a lot different than European beliefs. As far as past lives and all of that. Christians don't believe any of that. And it's actually taboo. But Eastern philosophy and New Age thought is totally different than Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of things is in Christianity that's taboo. Everything. I mean, gosh, you can't talk about witches and demons and stuff like that. I don't know about UFOs. I don't know if they believe. I don't know if they.
Christians have all said to me that UFOs are demonic, and when I first got into the political side of it, I was kind of like shunned. Oh, he believes in UFOs. That's demonic,
Oh, jeez.
But
Oh my God.
UFOs, I don't know.
I don't think so. I wouldn't think.
There's a very paranormal side to them that I didn't realize in the beginning when I was with Jen in MUFON, but it really started to show itself. So I wouldn't discount it. The problem is we assume because they fly, they're from space. I don't think they are.
And not to change the subject, but John, do you remember when you had I was like, what are you doing? You had a conference at a church in Greensburg.
Yeah, it was great.
I was like, you're talking about demons and stuff. Like,
well,
church.
That's amazing.
The acoustics.
What church was this?
It was the one right on Route 30. They changed the name of it, but it's right next to the state troopers where the training center
I was
is.
like, what?
But the acoustics was great.
Yeah.
And we had 300 people there. It was our biggest attended event. And actually, people got lost and never even showed up. It would have blown the thing out. But when it was over and I went to rebook, they said thank you, but don't ever come back.
I know.
Oh, really? Why?
I don't think they knew that you were talking about.
No, they knew, and they said they wanted to be open-minded, but then they got so many complaints from members, parishioners, and they said, "Look, we can't have you back." And I said, that's the way it goes. But we had 3 years there on the road, and we had 300 people just about, and
it was crazy. I don't know. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe you're talking about this stuff in the church. I don't know. I'm going to get kicked out.
Did anybody catch on fire?
Yeah.
It's like talking about ghosts in a I guess you could talk about ghosts in church. I don't know. I guess the Holy Spirit is the ghost, right?
Yeah, you could talk about ghosts.
Of course, you could talk about ghosts in the church. Why not?
I tell you this. Here's my opinion. All of these paranormal things should be discussed in church. Where else should they be? The pastor should get up and tell the people about demons, about alien abductions being very negative, but they shy away from it. And that's the mistake. That's where you want to hear it, but they don't address it. And that's a mistake.
Well, they believe we either just go straight to heaven or hell, right? So there
basically,
are no ghosts.
Well, that's
exactly.
That too, when you're a kid growing up, they say that there are no ghosts, there's only demons. So if you're hearing noises, making contact, you're doing it with a demonic entity, not a relative or someone else attached to the house.
But see, the thing is, like, how do we know that for sure? Nobody actually knows.
That's what
we're just people. We're living human people.
The contact part of it, just to me, it seems like it has to be humans. There has to be a large number of people who just don't make it. It's like trying to play in the NBA. How many make it? 9 on each team.
Yeah.
But there has, how many go to heaven? Not a whole lot. So they got to go somewhere, and I think they do walk Earth. I believe that.
But I don't know if we should talk about demons at church and stuff like that, because it just doesn't sound right. You should do that.
No, I think that's where it should be discussed. But then again, my encounters with the Catholic Church, during the stuff going on in my house.
Yeah, we know that. We know that.
But I got the impression they didn't believe in demons. They didn't believe in the devil. Matter of fact, the priest that came over and blessed my house said, "Oh, that's just something in the Bible to scare you straight. There is no devil."
Sean knows all about devils and demons. I mean,
he's
going to be talking about it tonight on his show.
Yes, I am into the night.
There's no generational curse. I believe that the sins of the father get passed down to 2, 3, 4
Oh my God! I believe my kids are paying for the sins of the father. No doubt about it.
I think all the bad things that happen to people is the retribution for things that your father, grandfather did, and now the kids, grandkids have to answer for it or get thrown in the situation.
Let's not clear that the kids are paying for the sins of the father.
I believe that.
But all through the Bible and the Old Testament, Cain and Abel, and then who else was there? Aaron, and then there was Ruth, and then there were all these people. All this crap that went on in the Bible. Yeah, I think we do pay for the sins of the Bible. Because look at us with Adam and Eve. Of course, she's the Who was it? Did someone say was it one of you guys said that? Oh, it was I think it was my son said. Not only Adam should have. She should have stood up to Eve and told her not to eat the apple. Now, why didn't he do that?
Because he wasn't present when she did it.
Right.
And then she went and got Adam and said, "Oh, look, it's fine. You try it." And since he ran off his first wife, Lilith, he didn't want to argue with her because happy wife, happy life.
Back up.
So he took a bite.
Back up. When did Lilith, Sean, come into the picture?
She was the very first.
Was she which one is the one who ate the apple?
Eve.
Or was it Lilith?
No.
Eve.
Okay, when did Lilith came into it? How long it was?
Go ahead, John. Tell her, buddy.
Did they kick him? Did they kick Eve out and he went and found another woman, or what? How did it go?
Well, not Eve. No. I just wrote an article on it and I sent it to Fate magazine and 2 other magazines I write for in Europe. There's very little knowledge on Lilith out there. It's Jewish mythology. You don't find it in the Bible or the Torah or anything, but it's the legends and the mythology that's come out of the Jewish faith. And so I went looking around for Lilith because I'm interested in it. You know, I did an episode on my YouTube channel on the TV series Penny Dreadful, and the guest brought up Lilith. And I said, you know, I don't know much about Lilith. So I dug into it and I wrote my own article on it. But, you know, supposedly she was the first wife. And she was you read what they say. She was a women's liber. You know, she wanted to be on top. She wanted to make the rules. She didn't want to do one thing Adam said. And, you know, Adam told Lilith, hey, God made woman for man, did not make man for woman. And there can't be 2 rulers in Eden. You know, somebody's got to concede here. And Lilith said, I'm not conceding. See ya. So she took off, and she was told that you cannot return. You know, an angel at the gates of Eden said, once you leave, you can never return. That's the way it is. So she took off and she ran into Satan. You know, she saw him in the distance, this tall, thin figure, and he took her to where the other fallen angels were in these caves, you know, and in the caves there were a lot of that writing that you see, you know, and she didn't understand it at all, and she got scared and she actually ran back to Eden, but she couldn't get back in. The angel was there and said, you can't return, and she saw Eve and she got into a jealous fit because she saw another woman. And there's a lot of you know when you read it, the symbolism, you know, in the story. So then she went back to Satan and them and mated with them, and it's really the mother of all demons, not all demons, mother of some demons and vampires in particular. And the storyline that I read was the first child born of Eve and Adam was a female, and Lilith went back and the serpent distracted the angel, and Lilith took the kid and brought it and kidnapped the kid, and the kid dies. She didn't kill the kid dies. And you know, and then they went on to have the other children. But she became where she wanted to get even with Adam and Eve and wanted to kill all of their offspring and steal their breath.
So did she become like the first succubus?
Yeah, that's exactly what they called her, was the first succubus. And you know, so I took the little I could read and fashioned my own story, and I think it's a great story. And I sent it Fate magazine, which surprisingly didn't answer me. I just sent them a story, and they loved it for the 75th anniversary of Fate magazine about Ray Palmer, who was the founder of the magazine. I wrote a very nice article on that. I sent her to Lilith, and I assume, because Phyllis Galdi is a women's liber, she did not like the symbolism. You know, I got Lilith mating with Moloch and then aborting the kid and sacrificing it to Satan, you know, which is symbolism for abortion.
Just the kind of stuff you talked about at that church.
Yeah. No.
That's probably why they said don't come back.
The lights would have gone out.
It was crazy how he did. I mean, what the heck are you guys talking about?
I was surprised they let us do it in the church, but it was probably the biggest conference we ever had. But the Lilith story, I want to see if I can get it published so it's on record that I wrote it, and we'll cover that at some other time. But it's very interesting, you know.
Yeah, it is. She's an interesting woman. Yep. And there's a lot of women who like adapt themselves to Lilith. I know a lot of, especially women, adapt themselves to her. Whatever John just said. You know what I mean?
I think if you were to really get involved with some of these, you know, societies and witches and all of that, I'm sure they got their own stories of Lilith, and that's kind of the person, you know, the matriarch that they look up to. She was independent, she was strong, and strong-willed and did what she wanted to do. She wasn't subservient to a man, and I'm sure they got their own mythology on that.
Well, we're going to go on and talk about this more, and maybe we can talk about it later in the show, but we're going to bring on our guests, and I just want to let you know that the United States and all over the world is going through some intense, dramatic times right now in existence, and we're going to see how this all plays into astrology and how astrology plays into it with our guests tonight. And I just want to welcome Jeff Harmon into the show. He's going to address the astrology transitions that we might be going through and all this crazy time. So let's go ahead and bring welcome to Chasing Prophecy, Jeff. How are you?
Jeff.
Hello, Jeff.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in.
All right.
To the show. I'm so glad to have you. So
all right. Look at this guy, pineapples and everything.
Pineapple. Don't let it go there. You just use your imagination, Jeff. I'm sure you'll understand what I mean. Yeah, it's a crazy time, and I'm so happy to have you on the show. So
thanks for having me.
I'm sorry about my dog. She's just not behaving.
That's okay.
Tonight. I tried to get her to go outside before we had a rainstorm, and she was too scared.
Actually, dogs barking make more sense than half the humans I hear.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, amen. That's right. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So Jeff, go ahead and tell us what the heck is going on.
Well, that's a great intro there, because I have been for years on radio shows. I remember I was on George Norrie's, at Coast back, probably 2010. And I remember he says, Jeff, what do you think of the Mayan calendar? And I said, not a single thing. I said, I can't come up with a single thing for the Mayan calendar. But I said, watch out for 220 forward. And the reason why, in 2020, we had a Saturn-Pluto conjunction. For anyone listening, plain English on that one, that's where fascism meets structure. That's probably the definition of fascism. Just FYI, we had the Saturn-Pluto opposition was 9/11. And we know what that brought us. Not only did it bring us buildings coming down like sparklers from jet fuel, but further, it also brought us the Patriot Act and many other wonderful things that have been limiting the Constitution in any way that they can. And then, never again will any of us run through an airport and say, wait, don't close the door on the airplane, because now they got to shake us upside down, at security, and see if there's anything in us, and then run us through scanners. So, the Patriot Act was a huge thing that the 9/11 brought in, as well as many other things that we'll probably never even know. And then the banks crashed in 2008 on the Saturn-Pluto square. And we know what happened in 2020. You literally could have set your watch to it on the COVID announcement of the media. And then, of course, we know also, too, what happened in our fine election in 2020. And that was also mirrored by a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, which is a 240-year cycle, which the last time we had that was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. If you go back 240 years from 2020, it's going to put us right in the middle of the 1700s. Well, that's the heart of the introduction of the Industrial Revolution, which they are now trying to destroy by turning off the spigots on all the gas pumps and oil pumps. But where we're at now, and to answer your question, sorry, I was a little, I just kind of wanted to introduce that's kind of been the setup. Where we're at now is the United States is going through something called a Pluto return. And everybody might say, well, what the heck does that mean? Pluto, even though it's a small planet, and they've demeaned it from being a planet, I always say C4 and dynamite comes in small packages too, and it really whops a punch. And if you go back through history, you can see, many historians have said, well, about every 230 or 250 years, countries seem to go through either implosions or empires get destroyed and rebuilt, or they go bye-bye. Well, isn't that interesting? Pluto's synodic cycle, that's a fancy word for just how long does it take Pluto to go around the solar system, is approximately, not exactly, but about 246 to 250 years. Well, the United States has a Pluto return. It has never, ever had that before. And we just completed, in fact, if you don't mind, could I share my screen? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, sure.
So let me take you down the yellow brick road here for just a second here, and I'll show you something that just happened. What's it saying here? Control center here. Select a window or a screen, entire screen. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to pop over here to another screen and show you guys something. This is what we call United States Sibley chart. Now, that's kind of a weird word. This was named after a man named Ebenezer Sibley, who was a Mason who is purported to have been the one who recorded the time everybody started dipping the pens into the inkwells to sign the Declaration of Independence. The history says that the bells started ringing in Philadelphia right around 5:10 p.m. Let's hope they start ringing again real soon. But anyways, the long story short is we use this chart in some ways as a reference point. It's kind of like a birth chart, if you will, for a person. It's a birth chart of a country. Well, we just had something happen here. In fact, maybe the easiest way to start this, and I know this is going to look a little bit like Swahili, but this is the United States birth chart on the inner wheel here. And that was the time, about 5:10 p.m., that it started, the signing of the Declaration. You can see on the outer wheel, this is what we call transits. It's what's in the sky right now. And you can see Pluto, the planet Pluto, that's the glyph. It's the sun over the crescent of the moon over the cross, is joining the United States birth chart Pluto. So it's actually going to do that 3 times this year. The first time, here, I'll show you. This is called a graphic ephemera. So you'll notice the planets kind of look like sine waves. And that's because when they're direct, they're going down the chart and they station. That's kind of a nickname that they use in astrology to say, like a train. It stops at the station, turns around and goes backwards. So the first hit was right here when Putin went in and started destroying the labs. I'm sorry, Putin attacked Ukraine. And the second one was right here in this July is coming up. This is where I think we're going to see these people who control things at the top. And it's not Biden and Harris and the Democrats and the Republicans. It's the owners. This has the symbolism of the destruction of this country. Now, I hope that doesn't happen, but Pluto is like that. It destroys. It's kind of like a tornado. When it's done, you're pulling shrapnel out of the wall, and it's very destructive. So this is the second aspect coming in this July 10th or 11th. And the third and final aspect you can see here by the dates is right after the day after Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate, right around 26th, 27th of December. Now, you might say, okay, what does this mean? Well, Pluto, again, I call it brutal Pluto. It tends to be completely destructive. And the good news is sometimes it also means that the destruction causes the phoenix to rise out of the ashes. And I'm sure we all hope and pray that that is the case. There's no question in my mind that what's happening right now with the shutting off of all the fossil fuels and the jacking up and lodging back, log jamming all our supply trains. I mean, I'm talking to truckers and people who own fleets of trucks in trucking companies who are saying they don't know if they're going to be in business much longer, or they're going to have to raise their prices, which exponentially, again, raises the entire structural platform of society's inflation on top of it. I really believe the owners at the top of the pyramid, which are far above the politicians, George Carlin might have been right when he said, forget the politicians, you have owners. They own this place. They print the money. Wilson let them in there about 100 years ago. And the Federal Reserve is probably not any more federal than Federal Express. And I really think that's the symbolism we're seeing here. And the people might say, well, this sounds really dire. Well, it looks pretty dire. But there's another type of astrology. Many people may have heard of it. It's actually called Vedic astrology. And you can see here, Vedic astrology is kind of a pop term. Its real name is Jyotisha. And that's a strange word in Sanskrit that unpacks into the science of the light of the soul. And it really may be, in my opinion. It's an amazing astrology that shows really the power points that go on in our world. And you can see here, it shows this white etheric energy leaving death to rebirth, and of course, on and on over the hills. And yes, this also happens to women. So the point is that Vedic astrology really seems to be a very, very karmic energy. And why they bring that up, I did something known as the Naadi astrology of the United States. In fact, here it is. And you got to forgive my chicken scratch here. This is handwriting. I have to do this by hand because there's no computer programs that actually do a Naadi astrology.
It's a lot of math.
Yeah, it's a lot of math. But I have to do this.
X marks the spot.
X marks the spot. There you go. So the outer, this box that I'm tracing, this big thick box, is the United States Vedic, or what we call Naadi astrology. Here's what's interesting. These bands, even though they're a little hard to read, are the progressions. Well, notice right here, this is the Saturn progression. If you look at Saturn, Saturn is the cross over the crescent of the moon. In fact, Saturn is a very, very, very interesting little planet, because Saturn in Naadi and Vedic astrology actually represents what we call collective karmas. It's the cross over the crescent of the moon, which could also represent previously concretized karmas now becoming manifest in the physical world. And the whole theology behind Vedic astrology is we are all spiritual beings having a physical experience. So Saturn is always looked at as, when is the energy going to release? When is the lightning in the bottle actually going to happen? So back to the United States, this birthday of the United States, she becomes 246 years old. Now that's okay, except Saturn, the planet of karma, is going to be over the top of the United States Mars, which is an aspect of intensity and violence, Venus, the sun, and Jupiter. Plain English and all that one is, that is a lot of energy that has never happened before, and it hits what we call the air trine, which Gemini's air, you'll see here Aquarius is air, and of course Libra is air. So it hits the United States air trine for the first time ever. And you might say, well, what does it mean? Well, my interpretation is we are going to see unprecedented backlash and change. And I hope we do, because clearly we're at a crisis point. Right now, Biden's got the plane full speed ahead, full throttle, right at the ground, no landing gear, and he's just, kamikazing it. And I think he's been told to do that. But Biden can't even tie his shoes, let alone and eat an ice cream and read a teleprompter. So he's certainly being told what to do. The saving grace here is Jupiter. And Jupiter is God's glory. If you look at it, it's the crescent of the moon, like a parabolical dish, scooping up the energy and concretizing it into the physical world. See, the cross always represents our physical world. If you look, everything is the seed of the sun, which is the sun, the giver of life, the crucible, which is the womb or the soil and the womb of a woman or the earth, and manifestation, which is the cross, which is, again, sunrise, noon, sunset, and midnight, or the four archangels of creation. So back to why I'm bringing this up is, as dire as it almost looks like the fire truck arrives and starts turning on the hoses and putting the fire out at the 11th hour right here at 246.5 years, if my math is right. What does that mean in plain English? Well, Jupiter aspects the United States Mercury. So that could potentially mean we see a dirty word that we haven't heard for a few years called justice, that actually something might start happening that saves our butts. Nothing sure has so far. The Department of Injustice, the Federal Bureau of Non-Investigation has done nothing except what they're told to do. And the astrology supports the crap storm we have, but it also supports that it could be the midterm elections. It could be, who knows, devolution, could be any kinds of those types of things that actually take place right at the end of the year. And I'm sure, everyone listening, if they have an IQ above room temperature, certainly would agree with that, because it's really a very dire time in this country. So that's
Sean, what are your thoughts on that?
This is very, very. I'm just intrigued. I really am. I'll be honest with you, everybody. I'm speechless tonight. I'm speechless.
Jason,
it's definitely a lot of information to take in. Now, I don't know anywhere near as much about astrology as you do, obviously, but with your knowledge of everything and how it all works, is there a way to predict the end of time, the end of the world kind of thing, using astrology from ancient times till now? I know that's a question a lot of people have.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hear questions like that a lot, like, will there be an axis tip? Is Nibiru coming? Are they going to land on the lawn? And finally admit it. All that stuff. There is a way. What I was mentioning earlier was the Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions. They happen about every 1,000 years, and they actually go all the way back to the flood of Noah, which is the last great cataclysm that I'm familiar with. There may have been other ones. And they actually have lore that the sun and the moon and the earth used to be aligned differently. When you look at, here, I'll go back to a share. And this is some really mysterious stuff when you look at this. Here, I'll show you here if I can get this to work here. Did I do it right? I think so. Well, it stopped. Oh, there we go. Something's not going, but here, I'll do it right now again and see if it happens.
Torture Tuesday.
Yeah.
There we go. It should be working. Tell me if it's working. Yeah, it looks like it is. This little diagram is very interesting, and it may not answer exactly what you asked, but when the sun and the moon and the earth align, we get something very mysterious known as eclipses. And of course, it either darkens the sun or darkens the moon on a new or full moon eclipse. These nodal points are mathematical, and they are where, again, the ecliptic of the earth, the sun and the moon align, their orbital paths. There seems to be something about longevity and the souls passing through this earth at this time in accordance to some of the ancient Egyptian, Vedantic, and Chaldean lore. And there may be a lot of truth to that. And I don't know that time is even real. When you think about time, is certainly real. I mean, you'd call me on the first of the month, I'll tell you if it's real, but and hit your hand with a hammer, it's definitely real. And we look in the mirror every year. But on the other hand, the rotation of the earth is a day. And to the flat earthers, I say it's still a celestial model, right? No matter how we slice this, it's still a cyclical model. And the earth goes around the cycle of the sun synodically 1 year. So what is time? Time is an illusion. And this diagram might show it best. I love this diagram because whatever your concept of God is, guy in the sky with the beard, all androgynous, whatever, it's above creation. They actually say our soul might be created right about here. this is the world's called absolute. There's no astrology up here. There's no Geminis and Pisces and rotating galaxies. They say this is really divine stuff. The seraphims, cherubims, and thrones are the classes of angels. And they say there's 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions up here, way beyond my comprehension. The next world's down, Braya, is again where the waters of creation get more dense. And these angels rule these energies, or you could say these dimensions. The Yetziratic world, if anybody's ever poked around in the so-called Kabbalah, which is really a kind of a pop term too, but just ancient spiritual knowledge, the Yetziratic world, also, there's a text called the Sefer Yetzirah, which means the book of Yetzirah. This is where the rotating galaxies are believed to be. And we don't even know how big this universe is. It's vast beyond our comprehension, that's for sure, or mine. They claim, and this is a mind bender, they claim there's 49 parallel universes and 49 subdimensions in each one. And if that's true, and I believe that it is, that's beyond our comprehension. Our little Milky Way might be way down here, and our solar system's here. And the last world, Zasea, is the so-called astral planes. Now, usually we get a guy with a suit tie and a microphone telling us about the devil, but it's just a little more complex than that. These are the 4 fallen spirits, or angels, if you will, and then you have 8 beneath that and legions upon legions. So the Garden of Eden story seems to show up in different ways in many different ancient texts, particularly Chaldean, Egyptian, definitely in the Vedantic. It's almost parallel. They just call everything different. They call them deities. We call them angels. And what's interesting is they say there's 49 dimensions and 49 subs here. So time is really a celestial clock of some type. And of course, if you go with the model of the solar system, we certainly know it's the cycles of the earth rotating and its times around the sun. So it's not a simple answer, but astrology seems to have changed. They actually said there was a time when the sun and the moon and the earth didn't align like they do. The moon shone all the time. There was never the phases of the moon. And it seems to parallel this particular epoch of souls passing through here, which God only knows literally when that'll end. I know they're measuring scientifically the magnetic poles moving rapidly. I know that there's a lot of science to support. It's all over the place right now.
That's amazing. John, what are your thoughts on this? This is a lot to take in.
It's a lot.
Well, I want to go back to when you first opened up and you mentioned the Mayan calendar. There was never anything in that talking about end of the world in 2012. Their calendar was cyclical, which supports what you're saying about Pluto. It was just on a rotation and then it all starts over again. So
right.
In my research with that, because that's really how I got started in all of this, was the Mayan calendar and end time prophecies. But sure. I come across the Mahabharata, and you're probably familiar with a lot of its writings. And so I'm going to take you a little bit off subject because it's what I know. I don't know astrology, but I mean, it certainly sounds like they were describing nuclear war and UFOs with the Vimanas and all of that. And it's just incredible that it was word of mouth. Hindu was the oldest religion going back 8,000 years, but it was all word of mouth until they could write it down, maybe 1000 BC, let's say. So any thoughts on that? How do they describe, telling you how to avoid bird strikes and that? That is incredible that would come up 3,000 years before, airplanes.
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing up some really great stuff because it may be that this whole picture show has, played many times before. When you look at reality, it's quite interesting because the Tartarian stuff. I'm sure you've heard of that, where a lot of things have been swept under the carpet. One thing's for sure is I don't believe anything the history books have in them. Do you?
Well, who's in charge writes history, and
Yeah.
if you're in Russia right now, they're the good guys under attack by the Ukraine, and China has its own history, also different than our history.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of history out there. There's no reality in some ways. There may only be perception. I don't know. I mean, I don't have a snappy answer to all this. I can only say what I know, and I know that what I know is probably like that much. The more I look into this stuff, I mean, one thing that I can say that's always fascinated me is I've had a lot of teachers over the years. I started this study back in the 70s. My mother got me into this, and I actually was very skeptical about astrology. She would call my girlfriends to the T. She'd say, "Jeffrey, that girl's not good for you." And I go, "Well, how do you know?" And then she'd come back with this extremely accurate description. It was my mother's birthday today. She died in 1988, so I say happy birthday to you, Mom. But wonderful lady, amazing lady. She said, "Before you knock it, Jeff," she goes, "give it a shot." So, me being, into kind of science and all that stuff, I started looking at it and I went, "My God, you're right." I said, "This is, a different language, a different symbolism." And it was really quite a journey. And in the 80s, I had a recording studio. We used to do a lot of commercials, and then I got into forensics work, and it was a lot of fun. And I was always doing charts on people, like I'd have the studio, and I'd have a bunch of people coming in on commercials, playing horns and strings, and then I'd have some punk rock band with bones in their nose, and I'd always want to look at their charts to see, everyone's free will and diversity is so fascinating. And again, that's such a great thing about America is, this is the place where you can truly be of any race, of any creed, and of any belief, and you so far have a right to hold that. And, the astrology shows that the United States, it's got its head on the chopping block. And it's really interesting how some of the people in positions of power right now are literally running this country into the ground. And it's exactly what the astrology says.
You should do a chart on George Soros because it's his money behind all of this. I wonder what his chart would show you.
I don't think it's Soros. I think Soros is a lower man on the totem pole. It is really interesting. Well, that's I had a teacher once who did astrology in London, and he's long gone now. What an amazing guy. He was an old man when I met him, and this is 30 years ago. And he literally did charts for a lot of these bankers, the Rothschilds and the Bilderberg. He did a lot of heavy duty stuff. He would tell them when to move money. I personally think these guys are very aware and plan this stuff. Like when you look at the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, you look at 9/11, not to get conspiratorial here on your show, but again, it doesn't take a lot of research to know that there were some very questionable things that were set in place prior to that happening, particularly Building 7. And I don't care, what anyone says. The architects got zero voice. And again, George Carlin was spot on when he said, forget the politicians, you have owners. If you look at the swamp analogy, really, how can you drain a swamp when the river feeding it is far, far above anyone in the District of Criminals, which I also refer to as Washington, D.C. So there's no way that you're going to turn that faucet off. I mean, I always love to say this. At 40 years old, if you take a calculator and take 60 seconds times 60, it'll give you a minute, times 60 is an hour, times 24 is, and at a billion seconds, you are just a little over 40 years old. At 80 years old, you're just about 2 billion seconds. I took and calculated, just for a reference analogy, just to wrap my head around numbers. 1 trillion seconds is 11,700 and something odd years. Do the math. I've done it 50 times. I still can't believe it. So where in the heck is anybody getting hundreds of trillions of dollars of collateral? You'd be mortgaging Mars and Pluto to get that kind of collateral. And when we look at the way this is going, this is the perfect monopoly. And, again, the new one world order, we've heard some of
Oh
our
yeah, we hear that.
leaders echo out, is very interesting because it's fascism and communism on steroids. And again, I'm not trying to fearmonger or anything, but the astrology I just showed you is clearly demonstrating that this is the time when I think it's really make or break. And I don't think that we're going to see this change. I think the real war is between the globalists and the nationalists, the people who are running the global cabal, this very complex and detailed secret military, paramilitary stuff, and it's all over the place. I again, I don't want to say much, but there are people I've spoken to as clients who tell me things that they can't really say much, but the illusions are there are some very interesting powers on this planet. They may be intertwined with extraterrestrial.
Oh,
and they may be intertwined with angelic stuff. It's interesting, that diagram I was showing you before. We always hear about demonic, cults, etc. Well, I was doing forensics work back in the late 80s, and I had federal agents telling me, Jeff, we know there's satanic cults in this place and that place and churches. And I'm like, really? And he's like, oh yeah. He says, oh yeah, we got record. And they're right, that there is. And when you back this out to 100,000 feet and you look at all this stuff we hear, some of it sounds like conspiracies, but a lot of it isn't. And the ancient texts actually speak to the Garden of Eden story, if you will, and the same stories in the Mahabharata and the Vedantic scriptures, the Rig Veda, the Arthas, and all that. It's amazing stuff, and they're alluding to that this world, the atomic structures of the Yetziratic universes, are literally intertwined with the evil spirits. They're actually, like the Bible says, forced to be a part of creation. Look at physics. Every atom has a juxtaposing energy. You have protons, electrons, neutrons, day, night. You have cycles. Everything is cyclic. Everything is balanced. And they say that the angels hate our guts, not the good ones, but the evil cast down spirits, because they are forced to facilitate creation. And this is very interesting stuff. The Egyptians were into this, and the Chaldeans very much too, where this place, I always like to show this little diagram. I got to show you guys this diagram. I don't know who this artist is, but he deserves a lot of credit. This is a cool little thing here. And it kind of fits some of the lore that we hear. One of my favorite little cartoons is that guy right here. Take a read that. So it's kind of like, when you pull that one in, you go, yeah, it's kind of like that sometimes. But it's like this place in the Vedantic literature talks where literally this might be a place. The religions had it somewhat maybe correct, not totally, but that this is a place of purification and rectification and experience of the soul. And if that's the case, I mean, look at history. It's all marked through war. The United States, by the way, just completed something last year when Biden opened the borders and said, come on in, folks, and get your free money and get your free plane ride anywhere in the United States. That's when Neptune was squaring Mars and opposing Neptune. Then the Afghanistan debacle happened right here, which was September through August, right? And then the final hit was right at the big Ukrainian issue here, which was the final hurrah. Do you know the last time that this happened was 6 months before the Civil War in the 1861? That's the last time this happened. Yep. So we've been to this barbecue before. The one we haven't been to is the Pluto return. So what I'm trying to say here is, boy, if we've ever had a crap storm, it's on our plate right now. And I think it's far worse than the media is telling us.
Oh, I agree with you.
Now, with you doing all your charts and stuff like that, after the third Pluto takes place, is things going to turn around and look pretty decent, you think?
Well, that's, my friend, I hope so, because let me tell you, this is exactly what I'm praying is correct in my math. If you take July and add 6 months to July, that's going to put us just at about January, the end of December, beginning of January. The cavalry may ride in and save us at the last minute. Because Jupiter will hit the United States water trine. See, in Naadi astrology, that's a whole different type of astrology. See, the water trine will aspect the United States Mercury and the ascendant, which is a good omen because Jupiter is literally God's glory, and it may save our butts, and I pray it does. If some of these people love their grandchildren and their children, boy, I think this war is going to be won at the top of the pyramid. I really do. I don't think it's going to happen down here in the District of Criminals, though it's probably when we see that happen, when we actually see DC doing something, that's probably when we know something at the top of the pyramid happened. That's my.
I do have one more question now. Since astrology started now, with the Earth rotating, wouldn't the planets line up differently according, say it moves a couple meters? Wouldn't that affect the astrology of?
It would. You're exactly right. I don't know because I don't personally have any direct measurement tools for that. I can say this. There's an old guy that I used to work with, and I really like him. His name was Robert Hand. People may have heard of him. He was, in fact, he's still alive. My mother studied with him. He actually was involved in the 70s because I actually started computers BC before computers were really around. And I know the very first computer programs, they were working with NASA to actually align where the planets are. And at least at that time, I could tell you up until about the early 2000s, the astonishing synchronicity of the planets was so accurate. They were to the millisecond. So even though we've had axis tips, etc., to my knowledge, you'd need to, because of the circumference of the Earth, get an earthquake or a tsunami that would move the Earth 100 miles before you'd even get a 1/10 of a degree of shift. Okay, if we get an earthquake like that or a tsunami, you and I are going to be looking for a new place to sleep. So I think it's there, and I think whether it's a flat Earth celestial model or it's a real model, and I tend to lean towards the latter, even though there's been a lot of evidence the other way. It really seems like it's exceedingly synchronized. I do this stuff every day, and I can tell you one of the most fascinating type of astrology is interrogation. It's probably one of the oldest. Interrogation is literally asking questions. Or you can just ask a question. It's like a psychic reading. It's like remote viewing. And you literally can cast a chart for the moment. It's not your birth chart and get an answer. And what that proves to me is this is an interactive consciousness. And, I always forget Trinity, Neo, and Morpheus. This truly may be the soul matrix. It really may.
It's so interesting. It's so interesting.
And I'm sorry to answer so long, but I really think, so far as I can tell, with the tools that I have in computers, it's right there, man. It is a perfectly timed, synchronized clock.
That is something else. Let me ask you, in your bio, you mentioned that how the world is entering a new era of technology and how it could be used against us or help us or enslave us. No, what do you mean by that? I mean, you can actually tell.
Well, the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, the last time, yes, you can. The Saturn-Jupiter conjunction that happened in the 1700s ushered in the Industrial Revolution on the winter solstice of 2020, which is right when all this crazy stuff happened. Well, look what we saw. I mean, we saw technology as a double-edged sword. I mean, look at, we're all sitting here at different parts of the country.
I know.
And this is amazing to be able to do this. And then look at the censorship. Look at some of the bioweapons that are out there right now. I personally think there was a lot more to that pandemic than meets the eye from the doctors I've talked to. Yeah, that's all I'll say on that one. But I can say it certainly seems like we are in an era. I think it's going to get like the Jetsons in the next 10 to 20 years.
You really do see that?
Oh,
I wish it would, with the little hovercrafts running around.
Yeah, I want it with traffic out here in LA, no doubt. I've got a motorcycle. But yeah, I really think it's going to. I think the paramilitary stuff that's out there right now, the stuff they've gotten AI already, the very secret military weaponry is eerie stuff, man. And I hear they've got particle beams, directed energy weapons.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's some pretty serious stuff.
This is right up John's Avenue. Do you think that some of these AUP, is that what they are, AUPs or UFOs? UAPs have anything to do with, I don't know, I mean, how can it... I don't know where I'm going with this, but astrology play into any kind of what can I say here?
Alien situation.
Yeah, alien situation with astrology. Or John probably can help me on this one. Do you think that could be what's going on right now? Do you think that?
I think it's been going on for a long, long time. I was talking to one guy. Some Marines right off the coast of California. They're measuring stuff coming out of the caverns underneath Zuma Beach. For anybody, you guys are old enough to remember I Dream of Jeannie and all that stuff. Yeah, the stuff out there, Gilligan's Island. And it's amazing what they see coming out of there. And you can actually see that on Google Earth you can see the caverns. But I know when I was growing up, in the 60s and the 70s, man, I can tell you, man, I saw some. I grew up in northern Wisconsin. It's like Dukes of Hazzard up there.
Oh yeah.
And way up like near the Canadian border. I was just up by Sainer and Minocqua, Woodruff, Eagle River. I don't know if you guys know where that is, but it's way up there. And the stuff I saw, I had motorcycles shut off, like literally shut off. It would just kill the electricity, and the next morning I'd come back and it'd run. And I would see pulsing spheres, and I've had missing time, and there's no. I mean, look at Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh my God, Skinwalker Ranch, yeah.
Just a little bit of trivia. That term UAP, which everybody thinks is the new word for UFOs recently created, it's not. If you read Project Sign in 1948, that's exactly the term they used, was UAP.
Wow.
They didn't say flying saucer. They didn't say UFO. No, but that's why I'm a historian in the UFO field. It was used in 1948, and they resurrected the term.
Well, Corso, you know about Corso, and all the stuff that he said. Yeah, it's interesting. My wife Camille used to write for UFO magazine, and about 25 years ago, we got to meet all these guys, and it was a lot of fun. And a lot of these people are passed away now. But
Sean missed the question there.
What's that?
On your chart, go back to your 4th level chart.
I saw that.
And you saw it, right? You have Satan and Lucifer as separate entities.
I was going to say that too, John.
Okay. Sean. I was waiting for either you or Sean, because that's a debate.
Dude, I was so engrossed in what he was saying.
Yeah,
I
that's
saw
I
that.
saw it there. You know, so what's your
Thank
thought?
you,
Are they two
John.
separate
Thank you.
entities?
Like I
But,
said,
but
everybody.
I'm not
We
following
were-
you.
Okay, we had a conversation at the beginning of the show.
Oh.
Sean's doing his
Oh.
show Into the Night about Satan and Lucifer being two different entities, and I was saying that I don't believe it. I think that they're the same person. That's just a different name that they use. So you have them as a separate entity too. You have Satan and
I
Lucifer.
do. Well, I don't have them that way. I'm really, I don't ever like to come off like I know, because you know what? I know that I don't know. I humbly submit that this is an extraction. I actually created that diagram in an old program that I have just for a way to talk about things.
Okay.
The Kabbalah and all this, they're kind of pop terms. I mean, this stuff is very ancient stuff. And I've got a lot of documents that I love to look at and compare with other people. And it's clear nobody really knows. But it's supported. One of the better texts on that was Rabbi Maharil. He lived in the 14th century. Ibn Israel was in the 11th. And then, of course, there's like Dorotheus. He was 300 BC. Some of this stuff is really amazing. And and the Vedantic stuff, too. It purports that these deities, we call them fallen angels, are literally separate entities. We have these meat suits called bodies, and our egos are contained in the spirit, psyche, and soul within this. And it's interesting because let me go back to that diagram. The whole subject of angels and spirits is such a fascinating, overwhelming, issue. This particular. Let me see if I can get to that now. I don't know if I'm sharing. Yeah, there it goes. It's a very fascinating, concept. They say these four were cast down, and there's 8 beneath those. And I can't rattle off the names, but I have them in a text behind me. And they literally are forced to be involved with the elements of creation. And they seem to all have different ways that they interact with what we would call atomic worlds, but they also seem to have an interaction directly with the etheric forces of life and death, which is very fascinating stuff. Because doctors will say, well, he's got a heartbeat and he's breathing and etc. But they say the guardian angel attaches the spirit, psyche, and soul to the embryo by silver cord at conception, not at birth, at conception.
Yeah.
And then the period of gestation for most women is approximately 9 months. And when the water breaks, they say that it's actually forces by the angels when that child is delivered. At first breath, when we exit the womb, that's the celestial imprint that astrologers call the birth chart. So first breath is the spirit. And if you look at this diagram, Rosh is the Hebrew or Aramaic word for spirit. So the nefesh is the lower conscious mind, and also the guff called the body. If you guys ever watched the movie East of Eden with James Dean, love that movie. The mother says, that's a lot of guff. I knew that was a Yiddish screenwriter, because guff is a term for the physical body. And so again, you can do this in different languages. We're all kind of Westerners and Americans, so this model works. But if you look at it in different ones, it's very interesting. They say this mark that we have right here is what the angel makes to make us forget. We all have that mark between our nose and our lip.
Yeah.
And that's that division between what psychology likes to call the conscious mind and the so-called subconscious mind. But what's interesting is a better metaphor might be this is the present personality. It's what we think and what we believe right now, which is very plastic and like silly putty. The conscious mind is constantly growing and evolving with the ego, but it's not us. It's what we think it's us. The so-called conscious and all this other stuff, and the spirit and the soul are senior to that. And what's interesting is when we exit these meat suits, or what I call taking the pipe when we die, we're all going to end up in another place, and consciousness is not localized to the body. And they actually say we keep coming back until we get that, and then we move on and reabsorb the collective incarnations, and then somewhere above is the divinity of the soul. There's text very specific to that. One of the best ones to depict that is a text called the Share Hagilgam. And this is Shar in Aramaic and Hebrew means gate, and Hagilgam is cycling. So these texts are some that are really, really quite fascinating. And of course, that parallels a lot of the stuff that we see in the Rig Veda. Oops, that's that other diagram. The Rig Veda and the Arthur Veda, that's where the term Vedic astrology came to them. Is all these different texts are known as the Vedas. And in fact, a friend of mine, Chakrapani, who just passed away, and if anybody listening knows Chakrapani, he was a pretty famous Vedic astrologer who lived in Santa Monica. We used to go out to dinner, and he was getting in his mid-80s when he passed. And he's the one who might have coined that phrase, Vedic astrology. I remember he said, well, I knew Americans would never know what Jyotisha means, so we'll call it Vedic astrology. And he was right, because it really stuck. And it's kind of interesting because these are very obscure texts. They're kind of like the Bible. It's metaphorical. You can read them 100 times and you'll certainly get something out of them. But the secrets, I think, are lost in the translations because the cryptology is where it's at. See, if you look at the ciphers, like a lot of people have heard of Exodus, right, in the Bible. Mm-hmm. Well, there's something that's at the center of most magical documents that these people play around with, and it's called the Goetia, or it's also known as the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon. That's only one fragment of what goes on. Very dangerous stuff. And it's to do with the encrypted 72 angels in the Bible. But the problem is the Vulgate translations screwed this all up. The minute you start translating the Aramaic and the Hebrew and the Greek and the Coptic back into English and Latin, up in smoke it goes. So the ciphers known as codes, and it's called gematria, numerology, Tamira. There's all these secret codes that are in this stuff. And the 72 angels actually are encrypted into the firmament of the zodiac. The same thing happens in the lunar mansions. You can see this is the Earth. And in Vedic astrology, there's 27 lunar mansions. And very interesting stuff because they believe the spirit passes through the sphere of the moon, which is a very mysterious little orbiting body, as you guys probably well know. And when we incarnate, or that spirit's tied in, the position of the moon in this zodiac has to do with the time elements called doshas in Vedic astrology. It's a very complex system that shows, when things happen. And the fascinating thing is, you and I will all exit this body when the south node, known as the K2 in the eclipse points, matches your Saturn, and the north node, by progression, will match the Jupiter. We're out of here. And so life and death, and you hear in the Bible where, the saints and the prophets used to live 700, 800, 900 years. Mm-hmm. That may be true. I really think it is. And I think the position of the sun and the moon and the Earth's ecliptics have a lot to do with that. And I think it's going to be souls passing through here on their journeys that will actually cause the angelic forces to move the Earth. If you talk to a scientist, there's not a single one of them drawing breath, me included, who can tell you why this Earth is sitting at 23 degrees, 44 minutes. No one knows why. There's not a guy in the sky with a string going around the sun. Why we have our seasons? Why is this happening? We don't know. We don't know why the ecliptical plane of the Earth and its obliquity, which is a fancy word, for its angularity, happens. These are very mysterious things. And, the gentleman who asked before, the synchronicity of these things are precise. And here's why. I've got tables that go back 2 2,500 years actually on eclipses that the Chaldeans had. And they're still to this day to the millisecond. I know I've timed them. They're to the millisecond. So how can this be? You know, this is a celestial clock.
It's amazing stuff. I'll ask you something. How long did it take you to learn all this? I mean,
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the compliment. But you know what? The more I learn, the more I know how divine this stuff is. We ain't smart enough to figure this all out, and we're not. And the more I learn it, the more I realize that this is really the code of angels. And when you think about what is astrology, a great friend of mine, Dr. Claude Swanson, he's a physicist. He worked for DARPA and he's written some wonderful books. You guys should have him on the show. He wrote a book called The Synchronized Universe. And he's gotten into a lot of the new physics as well as the quantum physics. And we've had discussions about this. The planets may actually be multidimensional portals. They just discovered that there could be a black hole on Saturn. Look at Jupiter. Look at the size of that planet. It's just enormous. And
it's so interesting.
It's way beyond anyone's direct comprehension.
If someone wanted to get a reading from you, do they go to your website, like the astrology, like to do your astrology?
In layman's terms, Jenny
I'll
wants
tell you
reading.
one that's been winning the day here. Let me show you this. I do a lot of this stuff, location astrology. See, you can look anywhere in the world. You can take your birth chart and I can show you where your planets are, where your latitude crossings are. And then watch, it'll turn into spaghetti here. But the aspects where you can zoom in, you can see a lot of aspects. Every single one of us has specific ley lines that are to your birth chart. And I got to tell you, I got into this in 1977, and it's so accurate, it's creepy. It's so accurate, it's creepy. It's amazing. Like there are places that are great for you. There are places that are really suckaroo big time. There are places that are challenging. There are places that are creative, and it's really amazing. Like sun lines. I've had doctors say to me, Jeff, I'm dying. What do I do? I go live on a sun line. And their PSAs drop out of the sky, or their blood work starts coming back better. It's pretty amazing. So I do that in readings. I do the location astrology, and I also look at the Vedic astrology. This is Vedic astrology, the United States here. And just FYI, the United States is right now going through something called Sati Sate. Now, you might say, Sati, what? Well, that's what I said when I first heard it. Anyways, Sati Sate is a strange word in Sanskrit that means it's the 7.5-year period during which Saturn transits the sign before the moon, the sign over your moon, and the sign past your moon. So each zodiacal division, known as a sign, takes about 2.5 years. So the United States has been in a virtual crap storm. And I don't think we need astrology to tell us that. For the last, literally probably 3 to 4 years. And Saturn right now is right over the moon. And interestingly enough, the moon seems to be a very mysterious little satellite that has to do with spirit manifesting in the physical plane here. Yes. Notice Saturn, the cross over the crescent of the moon, is part of its symbolism. That means previously concretized energy now grounding out into the physical world. So when a person in a reading or a country has, like we have, the United States, Saturn over the moon, this is when the rubber hits the road. This is when karma happens, both good and ill. So I could talk all night about what the United States has, because I'll tell you what, I've never seen this country have this kind of symbolism before. You know, some of you guys are old enough to remember Kennedy getting killed, and also, remember that?
2 years old. Yeah. I was 2 years old.
And I remember that. I was standing out in the yard. My dad and my uncle were cleaning out the leaves. John F. Kennedy was just killed in Daly's Plaza. And it's like, wow. You know, I just felt how heavy that was, you know. And Eisenhower warned, he said, he basically said what's happening now is what he warned about. And, of course, many names in military industrial complex, the swamp, et cetera, the criminals in DC. But when you really look at it, they're just the pawns on the chess deck, on the chessboard.
Mm-hmm.
It's really the owners who are moving those pawns. And it all comes down to this right here. If you turn off the money, you are going to stop the wheels. They have the ultimate monopoly. Nobody can stop them. Nobody knows who they are. I could say some things, but I won't. It's just very interesting. The war is going to be won there, not down here. And I think it's a spiritual / war going on through people. And I really have to say, these bozos are involved. These are some dudes. Yeah, there's some.
How do you pronounce the last one?
Leviathan. That's one. Yeah, Belial and Leviathan. Again, I'm not here saying this is the way it is, but my research supports these are separate, specific energies. I could actually pull some documents that would talk about what they do exactly. And it's some eerie stuff. And they're involved in creation. If you remember that movie with Keanu Reeves, it was not a big hit, but it was called Constantine. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Great movie.
Yeah, good movie.
It was a good movie. It was a lot better movie than he got credit for. But you'll notice at the end, Satan let him live. And I just wondered who wrote that screenplay, because there's a lot of truth to that. I actually have documents. There's a synagogue in Egypt that they just discovered. I forget the name, but I've got some documents back there. And it's profound, because they said, oh my God, we've got like 2,000 plus years of documents, just blow the dust off them. And they're like, they wrote them yesterday. And we hear the same thing, the Nag Hammadi libraries, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the books of Thomas, so many secret things that our bearded friends in Rome made sure did not make it in front of the public.
Yes.
Yeah. Those are the nice guys murdering each other, deciding what Christians would believe for the next 1,500 years.
Thank you.
Evil.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm excited.
Mark, when somebody wants to get a birth chart or like astrology, how do you know who to trust? I mean, there's so many. I get tons of them in the email. Like, let's get your reading, get your birth chart, And I was, as a child, like a teenager, I sent away. It was somebody in California.
Yeah. I love your diagram behind you. That's really cool.
You like that?
Yeah, I love it. It's great.
Like, how do you know? I mean, there's so much math. I mean, so who do you know to trust? I mean,
well, I wouldn't trust anybody. I mean, I think there's some really good people out there. I can tell you, I'm so grateful to have computers. I mean, when my mom and I were doing astrology in the mid 70s, we were literally taking on an ephemeris and writing them in by hand. Here, I'll show you something. I think I got it somewhere here if I can find it. I don't know where the heck I put it, but this is a really cool old device. It's known as an astrolabe. If I can find the doggone thing, I don't know what I do with it. But it's literally a device. I don't know where I put it. I'll spot it here in a minute. But it's literally, they would run outside and take the shadow. One of the most famous, what I call him the caboose, he was William Lilly. He lived in England in the 1600s. He was the one who told King George not to go against Parliament or you'll lose your head. And this is what he looked like. This is William Lilly. It's a really cool plate. That's him right there. William Lilly, he died in 1681. He was actually a parliamentary astrologer. And when you go back in time, Galileo, all these, Newton, they were all astronomers. Well, guess what? He called himself an astronomer. See, prior to the Industrial Revolution, astrology was astronomy. That was before, the division of science and church and all that stuff. And the Industrial Revolution, which really marked history. And when you go back into the Middle Ages, I call him the caboose. He was like the end of the traditional astrology. He's the last of them. When I go back, one of my favorites is Naadi. He was in Italy in the 11th century. And then there's, so many. I could rattle off a ton of them. And I was really blessed to get around a lot of these researchers who are doing translations. And I've got a lot of these texts that I've had a look at, and it's fascinating stuff because you see how much a part of culture was astronomy. Kings and queens use it all the time. Generals use it. I have one text, Naadi, he would literally have generals that he would tell, well, don't go to war now because you'll lose. Yeah. But if you go with this one, you're going to win. And they would. And, this is, really fascinating stuff. And there's many types of astrology. See, a lot of people are familiar with their birth charts. Mm-hmm. But location astrology is specifically looking at your energy across the globe. I'm doing that all the time right now, and I include that in my regular readings. And then there's interrogation. Now, some astrologers call it horary. I hate that word. It sounds like it's got hair on it. And prashna, they're all synonymous. They're all the same. Interrogation, horary, and prashna are one and the same. It's asking questions. You can ask about anything. You don't need your birth time. And that was really the ubiquitous tool that most astrologers use because people didn't know their birth times. A lot of people today don't know their birth times, And
I don't know mine.
You don't know yours?
I know. Well, I know Pisces. That's as far as it gets.
You got to give her one. You got to give her a reading.
One moment. We just got to take a quick break and
sure.
Shout out to our.
You may not even be a Pisces in Vedic astrology. See, you have something called the precession of the equinoxes.
Oh, okay.
It shifts.
Just pause for one moment. Just do a shout out to our sponsors who's sponsoring the second hour of Chasing Prophecy. Thank you, Carnation, for sponsoring. This is brought to you by Carnation. But thanks, Carnation. Yeah, I was born on a full moon. I was supposedly told, and I'm a Pisces, as far as I know. But it's
right, let's crank you in there. Well, okay, what's your name?
Jenny.
Jenny. All right, and give me your last name.
A what? A Nicasio. Nicassio. Like Picasso with an N.
Like that? Nicasio?
Nicassio.
Like that?
I can't see. It's like.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, that's correct. Right there.
Okay.
Sean, you can't see it either.
What's your month day year?
March 9th, 1963.
963.
A lot of nines and a lot of threes.
What time?
I was born at 4:00 p.m.
4:00. Even?
Even.
Uh-huh. I'll bet you weren't. Let me take a second. I'm going to see if I can read it.
Maybe it was 4:36. I don't know. I don't remember. I have to go find my birth certificate.
You got to look at your birth certificate because that's really important. You want to get as accurate as you can.
I know my time.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here once. Let me see if I can read it. I'm not going to say anything for just a second.
I don't even know if I have a birth certificate. I mean the original.
Yeah, you're born after 4.
Oh. When they change shifts at the hospital.
Lunch break, shift change.
Yeah. Probably didn't want to be born. That's probably.
This is a very
I was born during the
interesting
graveyard
show.
shift.
You might be 4/26/21. I can't be
I
sure.
thought it was 4:36. I don't know why they keep sticking out to me 4:36.
It's a little hard because I'm not as concentrated on the show. See, 4. What did I say? 26. What did I say? 21. 4/26/21. I think that's it. That'll be close enough for this. What state?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. All right. I ran out of gas once in Pennsylvania on the turnpike.
You don't want to fill up now.
$5 a gallon.
So what city were you born?
Pittsburgh.
Oh, Pittsburgh. All right.
Never left, huh?
Oops, I forget to put an I in there. There you go. It'll catch it.
Isn't there a G on the end? Or
H at the end,
I can't remember. I can't spell Pittsburgh.
I can't either. Thank God for
There's
computers.
an H on the end if you need it.
Yeah, there's an H at the end.
Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. Oh, yeah, you're right. There is an H. There it is right there. Here, let me copy that. This program is a bit quirky. So that's because I'm tricking it to do some stuff. Let's see if it takes it. Yeah, it always does that. Hang on. I'll get you back to Pennsylvania. Oops. Get you out of the land of fruits and nuts here. There we go. All right. So now if we say there's your Vedic astrology.
Wow.
Look at that. So yeah, March 9, 16. Okay, good. So
Crazy.
see, you're in a Jupiter Dasha right now. Wow, you're pretty intuitive, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're psychic, man, because you got the moon in the sea. You were born on a full moon. You were born about 8 hours before a full moon.
Yeah, almost a full moon.
Yep,
That's
almost.
the craziest how you can figure that all out.
Well, I mean, I look at this stuff every day. You get used to it. It's like driving a car. You get used to it. Anyways, yeah, let me see here. So, yeah, last couple of years are not too easy for you. You just had a Saturn return. See, everybody gets a Saturn return at least 2 to 3 times in a lifetime. See, the first one is at about 28 to 29. The second one's 58 to 59. So you're born in 63. So yeah, you just had a Saturn return. So Saturn return, I always say life is a 3-act stage play. Act 1 is when we're spanked on the rear end. Act 2 is when we hit 28, 29. And then Act 3 is when we hit about, Act 2 ends at about 58 or 59, and then Act 3 kicks in right when we hit about 84 to 86, something in that area. It can go as late as 87. But it's really powerful stuff because I'm just kicking you in here to this. And again, I don't know if I'm 100% accurate on that birth time. I got a pretty good hit that you were born at that time. We're very, very close to that.
So neat.
Control-V, there we go. So here, I can just type it in here. Pits. There we go. See, notice what it's doing. It's finding her longitude and latitude and her time zone. That's really important because it places you specifically at that point. So let me just see what you got here. Oh, wow. Boy, you got changes coming up, girl. She's got Uranus. She's got the planet Uranus transiting her midheaven. Wow, that's huge.
What does that mean?
Well, that's cool. Welcome that. Your life is going to change in new directions. It's actually going to be really exciting.
Oh, that's good. I need some excitement.
That all kicks in next year. See right here, it's going to cross your
next year. Jeez, oh darn.
Yeah, it's going to happen 3 times throughout 2023. See, these are her transits, so you can look at. Boy, your energy's good though right now. Look at that. You got Jupiter trining Saturn. It's coming right up. You're just beginning a Jupiter trine to the Mars 3 times this year. I don't care what time you're born, you're going to get that. That's really good. That's going to be motivating for you. It's going to be good. Let me just see what your secondaries are doing. See, I usually spend about 30, 40 minutes before I jump on the line here. Let's see. You got Moon conjuncting Neptune. Yeah. So, yeah, you might be moving here and down the line a little bit here. I don't know where you're at now, but it's possible that could come up. You got the progressive one. I'm just being general. Where do you live right now?
I live in the same area.
Oh, same area. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad area for you there. So Pittsburgh area, yeah. You're out by a Mercury descending line. That's actually pretty good. Pretty good, yeah. Yeah. See, these are her latitude crossings. You like it there?
It's okay.
It's better in the summer than the winter.
I like the eastern portion.
All 4 seasons in one day.
Yeah, you definitely need a snow shovel up there, no doubt. Yeah. So, I mean, just briefly looking, I mean, you're in a lot of change coming up here over the next couple of years.
That's really cool.
Pretty good.
Program.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad.
Yeah.
That's amazing stuff.
Yeah, good for you, Jenny.
Oh,
Yeah.
Good for me. Good for me.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get that book published, huh?
I already have books published, sweetie.
No, you're also
You probably will do really some cool stuff here coming up with that Uranus crossing your midheaven. Now, if
Yeah.
I'm off on your birth time, that will be a little bit different. But
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was somewhere time around there. I always thought it was 436, but who knows?
I got a question.
yeah,
Okay, so a lot of what you do involves charts, but some, in listening to you, some of it is intuition, let's say, or hidden knowledge, something that telepathy comes to you. So my question is, the Bible is very specific on divination and not to do it, which tells me it's real. Because if it's telling you not to do it, it's a real thing. Because otherwise, it wouldn't be saying it. So,
right.
have you ever had any paranormal activity? Have you ever felt you were marked, extreme bad luck, anything like that? Because kind of what you're doing is reaching into areas that maybe we're not supposed to.
Well, that's a matter of opinion.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, that's all subject to interpretation. I think, again, the religions have gone out of their way to demonize it, and yet the Pope takes a bath in a bathtub surrounded by the zodiac, and I can't think of another place that has more esoteric knowledge than that. And again, not to dispute that pontificated organization, but when you look back into many texts, I think that could be interpreted a lot of ways, because divination is different than, again, I think what they really frowned upon, and I do too, is using this for nefarious purposes, trying to hurt people. Black magic, all that stuff is really not good. There's karma. I'd have to say, the only ones that said that, it seems to be the derivatives out of Rome and some of the interpretations of the scriptures. I look at it this way: is if you don't want to do it, then don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah.
But have you ever
If you feel it's evil, then you shouldn't play with it.
Have you ever come under any sort of paranormal, demonic attack, had paranormal activity in your house, anything like that?
Yeah, I have. When I clear people in places, I have had some really dangerous stuff happen. Yeah, sometimes I have worked with people where we will clear people. A very interesting book that you should check out it's called The Magus of Strovolos. It's a really interesting text. It's about this healer who lived in Cyprus. Many people have heard of him. A lot of people know him as Daskalos. And he, again, was a healer, amazing, a Christian healer. And, he was accused of all kinds of bad stuff. And yet some of the top people in the religions would take classes from him. And because, the world is always trying to attack one another. And I think it's really where your soul's at. If you're trying to help people, that can't be a bad thing. If you're trying to use astrology in a way where you're getting over on people or taking advantage of people, I think that's a very bad thing. And just like in business, it's a bad thing. I mean, you can extrapolate that into any area of life. If someone is trying to, it's like attorneys. there's some really bad attorneys who know how to manipulate things in a very bad way, and they do. And then there's some really good ones who actually try to help people.
Any stories on paranormal attack on you, or when you were clearing somebody, like the most heinous thing that happened? Any stories to tell us?
Yeah, several. Yeah, I mean, there's always danger.
We want the worst one.
You want the worst one? Well, I don't know that I got the worst one, but I'm still here, so it couldn't have been.
No, that's a good sign.
I pinch myself.
Yeah,
But I could tell you one story. It was really quite interesting. It was a guy he's a very dear friend, and I've known him many years. He actually was working with some remote viewers. I actually do a lot of work with remote viewing people. I've had without mentioning, I've been hired to do a lot of research as to why remote viewers. Now that could be extrapolated into divination as well.
Right.
But yet, it's the military, it's okay. So, but these guys are really smart, and they wanted to know. There's this a couple of groups that I've been working with over the years, where I've actually done studies like, okay, does astrology, or better yet, I hate the word astrology in a lot of ways, does the astronomy or the celestial mechanics of this Earth interaction with the fixed stars and all that have any effect on remote viewing? And the answer is it absolutely does. We have found that targets, some really pretty smart, decorated officers I've worked with, that literally we have found their targets were more accurate when certain ascensions were happening and alignments with the moon, fixed stars, and more importantly, transits and progressions to their charts. So in other words, in your astrology or your birth chart, whether you believe astrology or not, doesn't matter. It's just energy. And when you get past all this religious dogma, it's really divisional. I mean, I don't know if you guys are Christian or Jewish or whatever, but I can tell you that, they did find them with the alignment of the stars, the three wise men, right? So it can't be all evil. And this is an interactive consciousness, and it's also a what I would say a consciousness that seems to be about purifying the soul. And if there's one thing that Vedic astrology has demonstrated, to me at least, is that, wow, can you see? I just had a younger brother died. He was 60 years old, and he called me up and said, Jeff, he said, you think I'm going to make it? And I said, well, Ed, I said, put down the cigarette and the beer and maybe that could help. He had a colostomy bag and, he was really not well. Good guy, really good guy. I always liked that. He was my adopted brother. He was Indian. And we adopted him when he was about 8 years old. And it didn't look too good. And he died. And it was right on with the astrology. And, to me, astrology is not the work of the devil. We might be, by our consciousness, because the astrology isn't doing a damn thing other than it's like the traffic on the road. In fact, astrology to me reminds me of the road. You are the driver. I am the driver. So what we do with our free will and our consciousness is what matters. Just like when you're behind the wheel of an automobile, if you're paying attention to the road signs and you're paying attention to the vehicle and all the other constituent things involved, you're going to probably have a much better day than the guy who's on a cell phone, ripping along down the road, not paying attention to the Mack truck going through the red light. So that's the way I look at astrology. It's the road, it's the traffic, it's the free, desert road that you can fly down, listening to the Doobie Brothers or whatever you listen to. And bottom line is, it's not us, but it's influencing us. That's a big difference. And the religions have demonized this so much, and yet they secretly use it. That one of the most prolific astrologers was Rabbi Ibn Ezra. And to all the people who criticize astrology, do you know that he is the man? Go look in your Bibles. Look up Ezra, I-Z-R-A. He was the man who did the commentary on many portions of the Old Testament as well as the Psalms.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I could go on and on, and
and I wish you could, but we're getting close to the bewitching hour.
Have any of your military contacts, when you're speaking to them, mentioned Collins Elite, Jason Society, Operation Orphan? They were all CIA groups that looked into the paranormal.
Yeah, they're looking into a lot of things.
Yeah,
and I mean, there's some serious stuff going on this planet. When you look at the amount of money the United States secret paranormal military has on, it's just staggering, man. It's creepy.
And on that note, we're gonna have to say goodnight. Jeff. Oh my God.
Jeff, thank you, Jeff. Thank you,
Thank
Jeff.
you so much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
the
for having
information,
me.
Jeff.
Hey,
That
do I get a pineapple before I leave?
How much you charging Jen for the reading?
Definitely. I know. I'm going to go look on your I would like a really full in-depth one, so I'm going to contact you. But Jeff, is that your website, Jeff at jeffharman.com?
Yes, it is. And
that
that's the
where
best way for people that want readings. That's the best way. Just email that, and I'm happy to.
There's a lot of
Well,
J's in this
it was
room.
that we didn't have any time to do our off topics because this was a great topic and a great show. And I want to thank you again for coming back on. And we will definitely have you on again. But thanks again for being on the show. You have a great
Thank
Thank you,
you, Jeff.
Jeff. You have a
You
good
bet. Many
one.
blessings to you all, and thank you for having me.
oh, most
All right.
definitely. Well, so much information, so much to learn. So much.
My
It's
brain's
really
about to
incredible.
explode.
My mind's blown.
I
Honest to
found it to be very. I've always been interested in astrology, but this was another way to look at that. I'm going to look more into that. Beta. Is it how do you say it again? Beta.
Vedic.
Vedic.
Yeah, beta.
Vedic.
Astrology
VEDIC,
was so
yeah, Vedic.
interesting and so much. So we didn't get to our off topics because there was just too much to do. I mean, I was like,
Hey, one thing for Sean though, when you were talking about the sky being different, that's absolutely 100% correct, and that was all part of the Mayan calendar. That the sky moves, a certain degree every year, and it takes like 4,600 years to complete the cycle. So in 2012, we were looking at the same sky that they were looking at 4,600 years ago,
Oh, wow.
which
Okay.
would have put you back to Noah. That was the sky Noah was looking at. And then, like Egypt, when they built the pyramids, they were looking at a totally different sky than we see today. So, what your question was, yeah, that does happen. It moves. Because of the wobble in our rotation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
so interesting, and we're so glad to have you as a guest co-host. It was great. I guess we'll see you in another 2 weeks. Is that how it's going to go?
Yeah, well, it depends if I have if I'm doing anything. If I'm not doing anything, I'll jump on next week.
Definitely. I mean, it was a good show
Yeah,
tonight.
it was an awesome
Very
show.
informative.
Yes, it was. I mean, I tell you what, I could listen to them all night. I know that's a good thing. We
I
can
tell
listen.
you
Oh
what,
my
I
God.
could not follow those charts to save my life. I had
Oh my God.
Yeah, the only thing though is
hieroglyphics to me.
There's just so much math involved. That's why you have to have a programmer. Forget it. You can't do that.
yeah, but years ago I bought a deck of tarot cards, and when I read the instructions, it was basically a game you were playing based on what card comes up, this and that. So I don't know. Do the astrology charts? I mean, is it all true, or there's a lot of things that the palm reader can tell you, and you say, "Oh yeah, that happened to me once." So I don't know. I don't know how accurate all of that is, or it's coincidence.
Yep.
Ask the Magic 8 Ball.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we should ask. We have. We should ask Magic Ball. So we're going to be heading on out.
All
so
right.
Sean can get into his show.
Yep.
So I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. We had a great show, and you can learn more on. I want to keep calling him Mark Harmon. It's probably because that one series.
NCIS.
So everybody, thank you for tuning in to Chasing
Torture
Prophecy.
Tuesday.
We'll see you next week, same time, same channel. I gotta find
Same
our
pineapples.
we gotta find our video, which I'm always late. Okay, where is it, Sean? Oh God, where is it? I can't find it. I always have to look for the ending, and I can't go fast enough.